control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and you are stuck with me now. That's it. I'm not letting you go for right around an hour, so I hope you guys will stick around and tune in and remain thoroughly entertained throughout the course of our journey. This is the Night Terrors, which are ghostly stories, roughly an hour-long show. If you're not familiar with it, if you're brand new to it, welcome and thank you for coming in. And thank you to all of you who have been spreading the word about the Night Terrors and about the Paranormal Portal in general. Check out the podcast if you're not familiar with that. You can find it on all the podcasting platforms. And I guess the phones will be open throughout the duration of the show. So if you want to call in and be a part of tonight's show and share something paranormal that's been happening to you or has happened at some point in the past, I'd love to hear from you. You can call in to 720-923-0500. That's the way to get a hold of us. But if calling in kind of freaks you out, you feel like you don't want to talk publicly, that's not your thing, you can always email us as well. I've got some stories that have been emailed that we'll be reading on Saturday night when Don's here. But if you'd like to email your stories in, you can certainly do that as well. And you can email us at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. So there's many ways to get a hold of us here, but hang on and get comfortable, grab a beverage, turn down the lights, light a candle, and get ready because it's time for bed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now underway here on the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. I'm still Brent Thomas, so we got that going. So I still remember my name, which has always struggled day to day. But today I seem to be on the ball. So no, I've just been really busy lately. A lot of phone calls, lots of projects, lots of things going on, interviews, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of great shows coming up on the portal, including tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, which will be Friday night, Valentine's Eve. I don't know how the hell you say it, but it's going to be tomorrow night's 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here on YouTube as well as TFRlive.com. We will be broadcasting, and I will be joined by the amazing Deborah Varner, who will be joining me here on the portal, and she'll be doing readings for callers to the show. So if you'd like a free psychic reading, then tomorrow night is your night. Call in to the same phone number that you see on your screen right up here, 720-923-0500, and you can get on the horn with Deb and see if she's got some insights for you. So that'll be tomorrow night on our show, so I hope you guys will tune in and take advantage of that. They're great shows. I've been listening to Deb do this for years now, and I'm here to tell you that I still never get tired of listening to her do readings. It's just amazing. She really dials in on this stuff, and it's just a great time. So that'll be tomorrow night here on the portal. And then Saturday, Don will be joining me because he was not present last night. And I actually had one of the worst shows I've had in a long time, and it's just the nature of the beast. Like every show can't be amazing. There's just one show every once in a while. And last night was my show. That was my show where it just wasn't, nothing was clicking for me. It didn't help that I had a page full of bad links. I didn't prepare as well as I should have, and it showed. So if you stuck it out last night, I do apologize, because I can do better, and you deserve better, and I'm gonna be better for you. So no, it was. I mean, it wasn't a horrible show. It was fine, but it just felt really. The whole night, I just felt like I couldn't find my rhythm, but that happens. But anyway, let's get into the ghost stories, ladies and gentlemen. I got a bunch pulled up for you, and a bunch more waiting in the wings. So we'll get to those. Thank you for everybody that's in the chat room. Great to see you guys. Always an amazing pleasure. And thank you to those that are just kicking back quietly, listening as well. That's fine. There's no law says you have to chat, but it is a great community in our chat room. It, in my opinion, is about the best chat room on the entire internet. And I know I'm biased, but honest to God, these people are amazing, and they have created, I can't take any credit for this. They have created this amazing group and friendships and family, and it's just been awesome. So it's great. And if you're not familiar with it, check it out. Go in there and introduce yourself and meet some great people. But let's get underway here. Again, I got stories ready to go, and the first story tonight is from New York City. I don't know if it's the city or not, but it's the state of New York. So let's see what's going on there. It's a long story, so bear with me, but I like these longer stories. I think that they're fun, and they're very interesting because they go into this huge narrative. Recorded a great episode of today, by the way, for the podcast. Had a great talk with a gentleman from California, and just a really cool bunch of experiences that he's had and has been through. And I'm actually going to have him back on because he's got a ton more and to share. So it was a lot of fun. So that'll probably be out Monday. But tomorrow, also on the podcast, I should say this before we get into it. If you're into flat Earth, you're gonna want to listen to tomorrow's episode of the podcast. Or if you're just kind of curious about this whole flat Earth thing, like what are people seeing that makes them think about flat Earth and stuff? Well, I did an interview with a gentleman by the name of Crow777, and it's CRROW 777. He's a really well-known figure on YouTube. Has done some amazing shots of the moon. He's got footage of these weird waves going across the surface of the moon. He's caught some incredible footage of what would seem to be UFOs that are all over his YouTube page. So if you get a chance, check it out. But tomorrow's episode is an interview with him. And it's a little bit of a departure for us because, I never have really gotten too far into the whole flat Earth thing, but it was a great interview. We had a great talk, and that'll be tomorrow on the podcast. So definitely tune in and check that out. Again, the podcast is available wherever you find podcasts, and that's Pandora, Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, and a gajillion other ones. So check that out. That'll be tomorrow's podcast. And then Monday's podcast is just a great journey through the paranormal with our guest from California. So check that out as well. But all right, New York. It says, let me preface this story by saying that I'm aware of the dangers of the Ouija board, and I wish that I never played with it in the first place. If I could turn back time and do it all over again, I would not even be in the same room as one of those things. Wait a second. I got to make sure I didn't read this last night. Yeah, I did. I think I did. Or not last night, but the night before. No, maybe I didn't. I don't recognize this. Okay, no, I didn't read this one. So this is truly a new one. But I did read a Ouija board story that was very similar to this on Tuesday. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't repeating myself by some reason. If I could turn back time and do it all over again, I would not even be in the same room as one of those things. I was, however, a teenager with no real knowledge of the dangers that using the board could be present. And I have a strong theory that although I stopped using it 13 years ago when I left home to go to college, that I'm still paying for my mistake. I began using the Ouija board when I was 13 years old with different groups of unrelated friends, and I was always very skeptical to the point of ignorance regarding the ability of some toy store game having the ability to make real contact with the spirit world. Now, mind you, I was very well aware of the spirit world, as I've been sensitive for as long as I can remember. I did not, however, have any respect for the Ouija board, and I treated it as a game from the beginning. I eventually realized a bit too late that I am afraid, and that what I was doing was the furthest thing imaginable from playing a game. For the first few months when we would sit around and play, we would have different spirits communicate with us through the board that would be cheerful and would answer all the usual questions. What's your name? When did you die? Where did you go after you died? And I didn't even think that we were contacting anyone. I was sure that one of the others in the group was pushing the planchette purposely, or that it was the result of what skeptics call the, it says IEO mortar effect. IEO mortar effect, wherein participants move the planchette subconsciously. Well, as time went on, I would using the board more often. That's what it says. I didn't make that up. It's just not a well-written sentence. But eventually escalating to the point of using it 4 to 5 days a week for hours a day. Nothing very disturbing would happen at first, but eventually things gradually started to get darker, and personally, my ability to sense entities seemed to be increasing. Forgive me if this gets a bit boring or voluminous, but I will do my best to sum up my experiences without having to write a book. As I said in the beginning, we would get the transient spirits passing through and speaking to us for a short time, and eventually a spirit that identified himself as Sam made his presence known, and things started to become darker. He was not the jovial type that we had encountered in the past. He said he was in hell, and that he was going to take us all with him. I laughed, being the skeptic that I was, but further into the conversation, I started to feel an evil presence in the room. So much so that I ended the conversation by forcing the planchette over goodbye, as he wouldn't leave willingly. You never really closed that board, did you? From that time on, we would use the board in that house. Weird things would start to happen. The computer in Kathy's room would turn on by itself when we were sitting 10 feet away from it, and things in other rooms would fall inexplicably. Doors to rooms would slam shut by themselves, then open again. Everything except for the computer could be potentially explained off by wind blowing through the apartment, and I had no knowledge of how to debunk these things at the time, so I don't remember checking the windows to see if they were shut tight. However, I was sure that what was causing it, because I felt the presence in the house. One notable encounter I had was with this spirit who identified herself as Anna. She seemed harmless enough, but she changed. She was a reoccurring spirit that would show up every time we used the board. She said she wanted to be with me, whatever that meant. And then she started saying things that made no sense to me. Kathy asked why she wanted to be with me, and she replied, King. So naturally, I asked her what she meant, and she said, Hell. Kathy laughed and said, oh, maybe you're going to be the ruler of hell when you die. The planchette moved to yes. Needless to say, I was freaked out by this point, and while I know that couldn't be true, it shook me noticeably. Anna then said that I was hers and that she would stay with me forever. She threatened to harm Kathy if she was ever around me, and tried to encourage me to use the board alone, which I never did. And at this point, we both freaked out, and we ended the session, and Kathy stopped playing after that. I, however, did not. As I said, I became obsessed. I started using another board at another friend's house, and the first time we used it, it was the usual harmless conversation with friendly spirits. Then in the middle of the session, I felt a presence. I looked down the long dark hallway towards the front door, and I saw a physical spirit. I wasn't afraid, which was odd to me because it was the first time I had ever actually seen an entity instead of just feeling it. Well, I was mesmerized and staring off to my right, watching a woman who seemed to be floating inches off the ground. My friend Veronica had been calling me, and I didn't even hear her, and she tapped me and said, You can see her? She said that you two were looking at each other. I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. And I just shook it off and we continued using the board. In comes Anna. Now, Kathy and my friend do not know each other. At first, I figured it could be a coincidence. It could be a duplicate name, but it was Anna. She asked if I remembered her, and she called me her king. She reminded me that she would always be with me. This, coupled with seeing the woman by the front door, was too much for me to handle. I wouldn't even go towards the front door, and I went into her backyard and hopped the fence and headed home. I felt like I was followed the entire way. Fast forward to today, I've always felt a singular or multiple entities everywhere that I've lived. The last move I made just over a year ago did not feel any presences in my house for the first time in over a decade. About 4 months later, that all changed. Anna showed up. I don't really know how to explain that I know it is her, but the best way I can describe it is that she gives off a specific signature in the same way that all other spirits do. She's not alone now either. There are other entities in my house as well. I have a feeling that I will always attract them for whatever reason. Well, that's creepy. That's a lot creepy. But I don't know. I guess you got to really be careful with those things, whether you believe in it or not. And granted, he did see a spirit, he says, but it's his experience. The other person obviously didn't see the spirit, but saw that he saw the spirit. Is it for sure real? Well, no. It's hard to say. These kind of things do kind of chalk themselves up as personal experiences, but if you believe it's possible to communicate with the other side, then certainly a Ouija board would be a valid way of doing that. Is it a safe way? No. No, it's not for most people because there's so much involved in it. Most people think, and I've said this so many times on the show, but forgive the redundancy, but it's not just a matter of pulling out a board and sitting with friends and chatting with ghosts. It's not just like that. It's not like making a telephone call. You're making a connection. And that's where it becomes dangerous, is that you're making a connection energetically with some kind of spiritual essence that's working through you to influence the board, whether directly or indirectly, whether, subconsciously making you move muscles or by manipulating your energy field, but one way or the other, you are making a direct channel to a spirit in order to communicate. And that's where it's dangerous. If you don't know how to protect yourself, you don't know how to clear a room, you don't know about basic spiritual protections, and if you don't know how to close the sessions, and it's more than just dragging it over goodbye. That's not an effective close to any spiritual practice. Dragging a piece of plastic over the words goodbye does not negate a connection. You have to have a release. You've got to have a spiritual release. You've got to have maybe a ceremonial release, but you've got to close that. And that's where most people fall into trouble, is that they don't. They think if they drag the thing over goodbye, that's it. I'm done. But it's not. It's not that. That's not it. You don't, when any, let's say any paranormal investigators, a lot of them begin an investigation with a prayer or some kind of practice that they feel keeps them safe during their journey. Now, at the end, anybody that's been at it a while will have a closing practice that they do to make sure nothing follows them home. Now, it's not just a matter of saying, hey, goodbye, I'm done, I'm leaving. That's not it. That's not good enough. You've actually got to have a practice, like a prayer, like invoking a higher power, like something that will make it so there's nothing going to follow you home. And the same would be true for a Ouija board. It's a different kind of investigating, but either way, you're poking your head into the spirit world. You're asking for something to make a connection with you, whether that's investigating or by a Ouija board or by other practices. And then at the end, you've got to sever that connection, and you've got to make that a very profound thing, because you don't want things following you home. So that's probably the most I've ever said about how to, about my feelings about closing a session. And again, I'm no expert. I'm just an enthusiast, but I think it's really important to understand that when you make a connection with something, you have to disconnect with it. It's like, okay, so I'm on my phone, I make a call, I'm like, okay, goodbye, and I set my phone down. Well, that person could stay on the line for hours and hours and hours until my phone eventually loses battery, but you have to physically end that call. And so that's the same thing, the same kind of philosophy. When you're doing a spiritual connection, you have to end that connection. And it doesn't have to be this profound dance and, all kinds of fantastic ritual, but it's got to be something powerful to you that you're closing that connection. So just my thoughts, but I just want you guys to know. I think that a lot of people are using Ouija boards that have no business using them because they don't understand exactly what they're doing. So take it or leave it, my 2 cents, but it's yours for free. This one's a quick little story. It's from Texas. It says, the ghost in my room lurks in my closet, and I can see her at night, only at nighttime. She's a white color, and she strobes on and off randomly. There's no way of explaining who or what this thing is, but I've given her the amazingly creative name Dottie. I've given her the amazingly creative name, if you don't say so yourself. Dottie. And the foot of the bed faces the front of the closet. And I usually leave my closet open, and if I wake up in the middle of the night, my eyes are usually facing into the closet, and it's not a walk-in closet, but so it's very small and cramped, and I only see the flashes at nighttime, but they don't always occur in the closet. Sometimes they get very close to my bed, and sometimes they go to the door. Well, one night I started to think maybe my eyes were just messed up. Well, I found that I don't see these flashes anywhere else except in my room. People have said maybe it's a blinking light from outside. Well, this light is more of a floating light, and it's not on the walls, and I'm very certain it's not lightning or anything from outside. I also see Dottie in the mirror of my room, and I've noticed that the reason I see her in the mirror is because the mirror reflects my closet. I'm pretty sure this thing isn't unfriendly. I'm pretty sure this thing is not unfriendly. So that means it could have just said I'm pretty sure it's friendly. So, but I would like to get to know it better. What do you guys suggest I do? What do you think it is? I think the story is very old, so I don't know what this person ever ended up doing. And they never wrote another entry, so we don't know what happened to this person and Dottie. I guess the guy's name was Mitch. So Mitch and Dottie, I don't know what happened to them, but I hope it all worked out. Okay, the next story is coming from Maine. Well, we don't get many from Maine. That's kind of cool. And this is, sorry, I'm just looking up. We only got 40 people in here. Where is everybody? It's a quiet night here in the portal, ladies and gentlemen. But this is coming from Maine. It says, this story isn't really scary, but it's so strange to me. My grandparents built a house in Maine when I was about 12 years old. It was not built on open land, and the woods needed to be clear for the house. And the house is set up on the second floor and an unfinished basement and garage below it. I went up from Massachusetts with my family to visit them for the first time in the new house. It was about 12 a.m. and all of my family went to sleep. Well, I set up a cot in the middle of the living room floor, and my little brother went to sleep on the couch. The living room is large, and it is open to the kitchen, and on the side of the living room is the basement stairs. Well, I went to sleep with the sleeping bag draped over me like a sheet. I woke up at around 3 a.m. because I was cold and found that my sleeping bag was gone. I looked all over the second floor of the house and couldn't find it. I went to the spare room to get my father, and he helped me look for a while and decided to walk down to the basement. And there he found my sleeping bag folded up neatly against the basement door. I was pretty startled, and my dad said that is really weird. He went back to bed, and so did I, and nothing else happened that night. I forgot all about the incident until I went up to the house again a couple of years later. I was about 14, and the same thing happened to me again. But my grandmother made the couch like a bed for me, and my top sheet ended up way off in the corner of the kitchen. And this made me think of the first time before, and this has happened to me almost every time I go up there. And just recently, when I was about 21, I woke to find my pillow in the hallway. Why would someone keep doing this to me, even at an adult age? Do spirits do these things, or is it just me? Well, that's an interesting idea. Could it be sleepwalking? Maybe. That's creepy. All kinds of creepy there. Next one is from California, and this one's kind of long, so bear with me, folks, but it's not horrible. I guess it's just big. Previously, I explained some unusual happenings that occurred in our home and out of it. Another reference to another story, I guess. Some of the other things that took place, which, if you remember, occurred more frequently a month after my brother passed on. And it happened almost all of the time for approximately 3 to 4 months after his passing. My oldest daughter worked a night shift, and she usually got home between 12:30 and 1, and it normally took her a while to unwind once she was home. Most of the time she would take a shower and then watch TV in the living room until she got sleepy, and she told me one day that while she was up, our pictures on our mantle started moving. She was kind of in shock, and she said she got upset and shouted, "Uncle, stop it now." She said that it did stop, and she was glad. She said a lot of times she would hear steps in our hallway and she would try to ignore it. And at times she would wake me up. And on one occasion when she woke up, I went into the living room with her and she said, "Mom, tell Uncle that we love him. He needs to stop scaring us." Why does this sound familiar? Is this the same one as last night? This is a duplicate then. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't mean to open, but it must have been listed twice on this list that I have. I'm sorry, but we actually read this last night. My apologies. Let me close it and open you some new ones. I knew it was like familiar. It's like, why does that sound exactly like the other story from Tuesday night? Well, it's because it is. Apparently that person submitted it twice. My apologies. All right. Got some more stories opened up here for you. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen, but it's just the nature of the beast. Okay, we're going to California. And, this one's about demons, so this might get a little dark. Something woke me in the dark, and I wasn't sure what it was, but I could feel a change in the air. There seemed to be a disturbance in the room, and the air was literally vibrating with energy. I jolted to an upright position and propped the pillow up behind me. The air was chilly. No, it was freezing. My teeth clacked together and I pulled my blankets up under my chin. I must have looked pretty funny sitting there, and about the only thing exposed to the elements were my teeth clacking away and my nose and eyeballs. I searched the room for a cause, but there was nothing to see. Just a prelude to what was about to happen. The icy air grew damp and a mist began to form all over my room. I didn't like this. I didn't like it a bit. And this wasn't an unusual occurrence for me. I was used to it happening elsewhere, just not in my own bedroom. You see, I am privy to the dead talking to me, and they follow me around, whether I want them or not. Check out my website, and he lists a website. But the situation was different. Someone or something was trying to manifest itself, and right in the middle of my bedroom. All I could do was watch and wait. I'm just going to open that link. The mist was blinding white, and my room was lit up as though I'd filled the room with candlelight. I shuddered under the covers, and they were no longer keeping me warm at all. It was as though I was growing colder from the inside out. By that time, I didn't think I could tolerate it anymore, and a pair of eyes appeared in the upper corner of my room, and they were almond-shaped and the brightest blue I've ever seen. At first, I didn't fear the apparition. After all, it was just a pair of harmless eyes staring down at me. I called out, "What do you want?" My voice sounded muffled, like I was yelling through cotton, and it kind of surprised me to hear my voice sound so tinny. Whoever or whatever this thing was, I got no answer. Calling out a little louder now, I said, "You've not been invited into my house. Leave now by the power and glory of Jesus Christ." And this is when it got ugly. The eyes went from a docile, beautiful blue to a fiery red. The thing squinted in anger, and the room started to shake, and I knew I was dealing with a demon. And I spoke the Lord's Prayer. And when I got a few words into the prayer, the evil entity fell towards my bed. I was alarmed, but not too upset. As I said, stuff like this happens to me quite often. Demons are liars, deceitful, and tricksters, and they will do anything they can to turn you away from your belief system. My belief system is pretty solid, and I know the power of God is there for me. And if things like this are happening to you, you better get ready. It's an ongoing journey with regular attacks. Anyway, these fiery red eyes swooped at me to intimidate me, make me stop using the words they, demonic, hate to hear. Of course, I was on my knees by this point, and when I feel the strength of prayer entering me, I could move mountains. The room got worse before it got better, and it wasn't long before it all stopped. The mist was gone, the red, angry eyes, all of it gone, defeated. I walked the house and did a cleansing. I still wonder what the visual of blue eyes was all about, but I don't give it too much thought. Too many other dragons to slay, and I'll think about it tomorrow. Maybe. That's weird. Again, invoking faith is a very powerful thing, whatever your faith is. And apparently that person's site doesn't exist because I clicked on that link and it's not found. So it's a dead site. But these stories are quite old. The story's from 2008. So that doesn't surprise me, but it's too bad because I would like to have seen the rest of what this person had put up. But yeah, very cool. Invoking your religion, invoking your faith is a very powerful thing. And you know, in terms of energy, like I believe we're energetic beings, and this actually came up, I think when I was talking with Chris just the other day when I was a guest on Beyond the Veil, and the faith came up in that discussion, and what I think it could be is that when you're invoking your faith, you're raising your vibration. And it's not to diminish the value of these faiths. It's not at all, because I think the faiths, if they resonate with you, are going to make you stronger because you are aligning yourself with the divine and how you understand it. And we understand the divine through our faiths. Those are our pathways to divine understanding. And so, not that I'm saying they're all right or they're all wrong, but when you find something that resonates with you and gives you hope and makes you feel protected and safe, then you are raising your vibration. When we are praying, we're raising our vibration. Now, I think things like demons and these other things may be lower vibrational entities. That's not to suggest they're not powerful. I believe that they are, but they can't, if you're resonating in a high level, I don't think they can hurt you. I think that we may not be touchable when we raise our vibrational level high. And take that or leave it. It's up to you. Again, it's just a theory. Whatever the case, we do know that prayer works, that people invoking their faith works. And it's not the sole terrain of Christianity. We've covered stories of people that follow the Hindu faith, evoking their faith or whatever. It's not that one is right and the rest are wrong. They're all powerful because we ascribe to them and we believe in them, and that's what makes them powerful. That's not to say that there isn't a divine power. There is. But I personally, and this is my own feelings, take it or leave it, but I'm just going to put it out there. I personally don't think that the true divine doesn't love some and not the other based upon what they believe. That's, again, I'm going out on a limb a little bit there, but I don't believe that a perfect God would be, well, you're my kid, but you believe something else, and so you're not in my favor right now. Screw you. I think when you call on the divine in the truth of your heart, it's going to come through. So, just my opinion. Again, take it or leave it, but it's mine. We're going to Ohio now, ladies and gentlemen. This one's kind of long, but not too bad. I find it ironic that I just registered. Oh, I don't want to read that part. That's all the fluffy start. I'm sure many people have heard about the elusive Mothman, especially after the movie, The Mothman Prophecies. If not, the Mothman was a very tall, 5 to 8 foot tall humanoid type creature with bright red glowing eyes, large wings for which it could use to fly. It was most famous in the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where it was spotted the most. Apparently, it's been spotted a lot more in Illinois, around the Chicago area, believe it or not. And you can find lots of stories coming out of Illinois. If you go to the singular40.com, they've got a bunch of eyewitness accounts there from people in Illinois that are bumping into the Mothman. So really crazy stuff. Well, the town where I grew up and most of my family still resides was a small town in Ohio, maybe 20 minutes or so outside of Wheeling, West Virginia. I was talking to my dad on the phone just 2 nights ago and was telling him about my experiences with the ghostly footprints. And he asked me if he told me about the thing he saw last week while driving home from work, and he then began to tell me what he had seen. My dad works the night shift for a coal mine in Monroe County, Ohio, and while he was driving home from work early one morning between 4 and 5 a.m., he noticed in the road this large creature crouched down in the road with bright red glowing eyes that looked directly at him. He said this creature also had very large wings, which were also kind of wrapped around it as it crouched in the middle of the road. He said as long as he lived, he had never in his life seen anything like this, and to be honest, it actually creeped him out. He proceeded to drive by it, and he looked behind him and to see where it was, and it was gone. He said that he was actually scared to get out of his car when he got home, in fear that perhaps it had followed him, or at least was on his car. And luckily it wasn't, and he hasn't seen it since then. My dad had never heard of the Mothman, nor had he ever seen the movie, and he said that everybody he had described what he had seen to right away said, "Sounds like you saw the Mothman." You hear stories like this all the time, and because you don't really know the person who witnessed it, whether you want to believe it or not, there is still a part of you that questions whether or not it's true. Knowing my dad and what a logical thinker he is usually the one to try to come up with logical excuses for things that are otherwise unexplainable. He's very skeptical about things like aliens, UFOs, ghosts, etc. And for me to talk to him and hear him tell me about this Mothman-like creature was incredibly shocking, for this was not like my father at all. There isn't a doubt in my mind that whatever he saw was 100% true. It has completely made a believer out of me when it comes to the Mothman, and I will say that I'm a little worried, for what I understand is that when people actually see the Mothman, often sometimes something very bad happens afterwards. I've done some research on this, and whether or not that fact is true about the Mothman, my findings are inconclusive, and I hope that, of course, for the sake of my father and my family, that is not true. I was wondering if anybody else had ever witnessed or know of anybody who witnessed or seen the Mothman. And if anybody has any other information about the Mothman, that might be helpful, especially now after this incident. I'm very interested in finding out everything I can about this Mothman. Thank you for reading this. That's really creepy. I don't know. It really boggles my imagination that these big, very large humanoid beings are out there. It's like, where do they go? Are they extraterrestrial? Are they something else? Are they multidimensional? I don't know. But where do they go? I mean, what are they doing? What's going on around Chicago, for instance? Of course, they are attributed as harbingers of negative events because, of course, they were witnessed. The Mothman was witnessed in Point Pleasant prior to this bridge collapsing. But I don't know. I mean, of all the stories that I've heard coming out of Illinois, I don't think it's a harbinger for bad things. There's legends that a Mothman was sighted in New York City prior to the 9/11 incident, but I don't know. I'd never heard that for years and years and years and years until I started doing the show. But you'd think if it was such a profound event, more people would be talking about it, but I'd never heard that before. I'm not sure that I buy that it's a harbinger of bad things, but again, you got to wonder what the hell it is. What are they doing? Why are there large moth-like people running around? And what are they up to? You know, that's where my head goes in those things. But next we're going to Illinois, oddly enough. And this is about a Ouija board again. So before I begin, I don't want to hear any comments telling me I did something stupid or that I should never ever do this. It's just spamming and a waste of time and space. Secondly, my name seems to be a relatively important part of the story, so for anyone who hasn't seen my profile, it's Robbie Harkins. It doesn't matter to me. You can find me on the net. Third, some names have been changed. Chelsea and Vicky are the only ones that are real. Now let's begin. It had been a long night. I was visiting my sister in Illinois, and we had to babysit her half-siblings all day. Finally, after getting them into bed, we thought, Chelsea suggested that we try the Ouija board. Well, I was nervous, never having tried one before, and simply thinking of them as divining tools that a lot of people use incorrectly. When I calmed down, I did agree to it, but only after getting 6 light-colored candles. Most of them were white, and the rest were light blue, praying over Chelsea, the room, and myself, blessing just about everything there was to bless, even the board and the pointer, and reading some passages out of the Bible, including the Lord's Prayer. I arranged the 6 candles in a circle around us, and we were sitting on the floor. I set the 2 Bibles open to 2 passages. I remember that one was Psalms 23, and I only remember that the other one was in Matthew. Before we got started, a knock came pounding on the door. We jumped up. It was really Chelsea's little brother. "Can I come in? I want to see. Let me in. I'm telling Mom." We yelled at him and finally left. He finally left. And with that all said and done, we began our Ouija session. We said in greeting, for we wished to talk to a specific angel. We greet the angels around us happily, and we expel the demons from us a few times, and it works for me when I use regular divining tools, especially dowsing rods, and I had no idea that wasn't going to cut it. We proceeded to request the audience of the angel we wanted to speak to. Within a minute, the pointer began to move just slightly, as if to center itself on the starting point. We proceeded to ask it questions, starting with things that only one of us would know, and I asked, "Do you mind if we ask a few questions to prove that you're real?" The pointer moved fast, so fast that Chelsea's fingers started to slide off it a bit, and immediately to yes. "Okay, what was my first dog's name?" Chelsea began. "Goofus, Gufus. "Oh my gosh, that was really close. His name was Doofus." "All right, now, do you know phone numbers, correct?" I questioned. "Yes." "Could you tell me Chelsea's mom's phone number?" "Yes," and it proceeded to spell out some numbers, and we wrote them down afterwards, and Chelsea began to take her hand off the planchette. "You're moving this." "I swear I'm not. I'm just as mystified as you are." "Quit lying. I've done the Ouija board several times with my friend, and it's never even started working this fast. My friends and I always wait at least an hour, or even then it moves slow. You have to be pushing it. There's no way it could possibly move this fast." Well, we ended the session after that, and we went downstairs, shared our findings with Chelsea's mom, compared the phone numbers. Once again, they weren't exact matches, but close. Her mom started trying to use the microwave, and it had completely gone out. What's more, it had been working just before Chelsea and I had begun our session, and it worked perfectly the next morning and never gave us any more issues the rest of the time. The next night we did it again. By that time, I convinced Chelsea to be open-minded about the experience, and she had agreed, and we followed the same procedure as the night before. This time we asked the same spirit, and yes, we could tell it was the same one. Some more questions. I asked him, "Do you have any words of advice for me?" Once again, it moved extremely quickly and immediately. HAJWKL987. "Do you have any advice for Chelsea?" It says, "Have to MUHFFFUSS. Robbie yells, I will wix yedge." I knew there were different words because the planchette would pause between each word. We eventually found out that there were 2 of them that we're speaking to. One of them said their name was Yixley Zaffer, And the sorry. And the other said Gabriel Okurix. And we ended our talking session around midnight and again brought our findings to Chelsea's mom. And now we had all the lights off upstairs in Chelsea's room, and there was only one room between there and the stairs. The stairs came right out next to the kitchen, and there weren't supposed to be any lights on in there. Chelsea's mom was in one of the kids' rooms and got up when she saw us. We tried turning the kitchen light on, but the power was out. The power next door, which was visible from the kitchen window, was on. Their porch lights, house lights, and everything all on. We looked out the window on the opposite side of the house, and all of the lights from there on were totally out. Porch lights, house lights, even some streets lights were out. It was just a line of dead houses. In 2 hours, the kitchen lights came on as well as the rest of the lights that were off in the neighborhood. Just to assure you, the weather was clear that day and and the following, and there had been a storm the day before, but the weather had long since cleared up by then, and all was clear all that day and the next. The next day was normal. Then we decided to do it again. And that's where it ends. Okay. What the hell? Okay, so there's another story, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's a continuation, so let me pull that up so we can continue and find out what just exactly happened here. Well, it says, since the incident with the Ouija board, several things have happened. Firstly, the night after the events that happened in part 1, we decided to bring Chelsea's mom upstairs to practice it with us. You know, I've never heard the Ouija board described as practicing. That's interesting. First, we used the dowsing rods for a while so that we could warm everything up, and the strange thing was that they worked very well when I used them, but slow when Chelsea was asking, and when her mom asked questions, the reaction was completely bizarre. The rods would go in opposite directions, and every time we asked things about the spirit that was around her, we could not get a clear response. We eventually got tired of it and began to set up and use the Ouija board. Being as Christian as I am, I went through prayer and blessing everything but the people in the room. Now, in hindsight, that was a bad idea. I should have been praying over Vicky, stepsister's mom, and Chelsea, stepsister, because of what happened during the session. Our Ouija session continued relatively normally. However, there was something different about the atmosphere. It was somehow heavier than the nights before. We were trying to contact a spirit for Vicky. Now, I suppose that the flaw in our logic was that we were not trying to contact a particular spirit, just an angel that was around her. And that was where we went wrong. We tried asking for a name, and it spelled out Emma, E-M-M-A. And when we asked if it had a surname, the pointer moved to yes. We asked for it, and the pointer seemed to struggle for a few seconds before tentatively going to X, and then no. And then the pointer began to move to the edge of the board very quickly. Out of curiosity, I kept all our hands on it, and it went all the way off the board and started moving across the floor, at which point we did something stupid. Rather than try to move the pointer to goodbye, I didn't know I was allowed to do that at the time, we picked it up and placed it back in the middle. Then we said goodbye, and the pointer moved to goodbye. We then called up Gabriel, the kinder spirit from the nights before, and began to ask a few questions, but I noticed something odd about the way the planchette was moving. The first couple of times we had talked to this particular spirit, the planchette had moved straight to each letter, and the little plastic needle had stopped dead center on each letter. The responses had been clear the first 2 nights, and on the particular night that I'm writing about, the planchette would move around the board a little before coming to a halt. That would usually be so close to the edge of a letter that I'd have to bend over the board to make sure it was on a letter at all. The answer seemed rather garbled as well. The atmosphere in the room began to feel evil, and we were uneasy, a little nauseous, and trembling a bit, and finally Chelsea got scared and refused to join us. We then promptly ended the session, telling the spirit goodbye. The planchette moved to goodbye. I picked up the dowsing rods again. Vicky and I were wondering what happened during the Ouija board session, so we decided to speak to the spirit that we had been communicating with all night. Again, we could not get a clear answer, but slowly, both rods began to be completely taken over. One of them would move very quickly, and the other would slowly point in the direction that the other one would. I could tell they were being taken over by something evil, because Vicky asked, "Are you from hell?" And they pointed to yes. "Get out, get away from me, leave me alone." The rods slowly pointed to no, so I dropped them. We were all freaked out at this point and decided to break the Ouija board. We shattered the planchette and tore the board to pieces. Afterwards was probably the weirdest part for Vicky. Nothing seemed to happen. Whichever demon was talking to us was probably already with her. For Chelsea, it took her 4 months just to go back to sleep in her room, which is where we held the sessions. Again, she said that whenever she was in there, she could feel an evil presence and it made her uneasy, so she couldn't sleep. She slept on her living room couch for a long time. For me, some very strange things began to happen. When I got home back in Texas, I began seeing this white ghostly figure walking down the hall at night, while I tried to sleep, and my room has a full view of 2 hallways since it is meant to be more of a sitting room. One night, my mom confirmed all this by calling to me, "Robbie, will you shut my door? I keep seeing this lady walking around in the hall." But that scared me a lot. Then on a Halloween night, around midnight, I'd finished my late night trick-or-treating with my friends, and my stepsister Chelsea called me and told me something. I did a bit of research on those names that we found. I couldn't find any names matching Yixley or Okikurix, but I did find something interesting. The name of a demon that I found listed has a lot of sites, on a lot of sites, is named Xaphan. It's spelt a lot like Zafir and sounds like it too. I think you may be haunted by a demon. Well, after talking to her, I turned around and right in plain view, I saw a gigantic, too big to be a mom or stepdad, they're both short, black-cloaked figure walk in my room, stand there for a second or two, and then walk out. And I told it to go away and leave me alone. In 5 different isolated incidents after that, I saw him again, but then I haven't seen him since mid-December of 2008. Chelsea was finally able to sleep peacefully in her room, and the white lady stopped walking the halls. Everything was going back to normal, and one thing that I noticed, though, is that the dowsing rods don't work as quickly as they used to for me, which is a bummer. I hope you enjoyed this 2-part long-awaited story, that my cheap shot from part 1 is now justified. There you go. More Ouija fun, ladies and gentlemen. More Ouija fun. I got to check the time, see how far we're at here. It's been going for a while. Actually, that is the show, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. We're already done. But thank you so much for being here and joining me tonight on the show. I appreciate it a bunch. It's always a great pleasure. Thank you to all 51 of you who are here. I appreciate you guys stopping in. Thank you so much. And to all the chatters, thank you guys. It's always a pleasure. And I guess that's going to wrap it up. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I will be back tomorrow night with Deb Varner here on the Paranormal Portal. We'll be doing free readings, free psychic readings to callers of the show. It's a 2-hour show. Starts at 7 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel. You can also find it on tfrlive.com. But definitely check it out. And I'll be here waiting for you. So, and of course, Deb will be with me. But hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much. Check out the podcast tomorrow as well. Crow777 is my guest on the podcast. A great interview, great discussion. If you know, it is flat Earth, and I know that really strokes some people wrong. But in any case, it's a lot of people are believing this, and so it's an interesting topic of discussion. And there again, whether you believe in flat Earth or not, just understand that whatever we believe becomes our truth. And so if you don't believe the Earth is flat, well, maybe you're right. If you believe it's flat, maybe you're right. I don't pretend to know. I haven't been to space. I probably won't get there anytime soon, so I guess it's all possible. Just like all of the paranormal, it's all possible. So give it a listen. Let me know what you think, and yeah, I hope you guys continue to tune into the show. But I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back tomorrow with Deb Varner, and I hope you have a great night. So take care, everybody, and sweet dreams.